to Beyond the Gate, Episode 2, The First Day. I'm Megan.
And I'm Meg.
And today we will be delving into the second episode of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. And as we said, it is entitled The First Day. And the summary from Crunchyroll is a glimpse into the past reveals the pain and desperation that drove the Elric boys to break alchemy's greatest taboo, human transmutation, and their reasons for becoming dogs of the military.
Okay, we open with a monologue about the law of equivalent exchange. And we see Anna now in a train talking about they're heading to Lior. Yeah, we don't need to see their journey, so it leaves us plenty of time for flashbacks. And a 10-year flashback. Ed is 5 years old and Al is 4. And they are doing alchemy and it's very adorable. Their mother walks in and at first she's like, "What are you guys doing?" And, is kind of concerned, but then she sees them. I think Ed transmutes
a little bird.
Yeah, a little bird, and she's so proud of them, and it makes them so happy.
It reminds me of when kids scribble on the walls. Your parents are going to be mad at first because you're not supposed to be drawing there, but if you did something really impressive, they might kind of let it slide and be like, "Wow, you're an artist, but let me get you some pens and paper instead."
No, my parents were always mad, and they made me clean it up, or my siblings. I don't remember drawing on the wall that
I don't think I ever did.
I didn't really do that, but I had siblings and a certain niece who loves to do that.
I drew on my face when I was a kid.
I feel like I'm pretty sure at one time I got into my mother's lipstick.
Mm-hmm.
Classic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was eyeliner. I made my entire face black.
No, that's a cute look. That's so sorry.
Okay. Getting into Ed and Al's family. So there's a brief mention of the father, but we don't meet him yet. But we do meet their mother, Trisha Elric. Trisha is voiced by Lydia McKay. Other roles she had were Cynthia in Dragon Ball Z, Sloth in the 2003 Fullmetal Alchemist, which we'll probably talk about that character at some point, and more recently, Kyoko Honda from Fruits Basket, another great mom character.
And then we get a little, I guess, kind of voiceover that a plague comes and their mom dies.
Yep, it's protagonist curse.
Classic, yes, classic protagonist curse. We see the boys at her in the graveyard at her tombstone, and they're talking.
Yeah, there's the tombstone is engraved with the dates 1878 to 1904, which means that Trisha was only 26.
Again, they mention their father, or Ed does, and it's kind of in a negative way. I think he says something like, "Yeah,
he didn't even show up for the funeral," so Ed's kind of disowning him, really.
Yeah.
Al doesn't seem to have the same sentiments, but he understands where his brother is coming from, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. And Ed just talks about how much they miss her and that there might be a way to bring her back. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And that maybe that's something that they will try.
Maybe.
Maybe it is.
There's a scene at the funeral and Ed and Al are just sobbing. It's so sad. It's drawn really well and it's just really sad. You can really see the boys' expressions throughout the entire part where they're missing their mom, And then there is a brief cut to them in school, which we never get to see in the anime, but Risenbool does have quite a few kids, and it looks to me like it's maybe a one-room schoolhouse type situation. And they're trying to think of ways to bring their mom back. So they're discussing complex alchemical components in the middle of class and talking like real scientists. And their teacher just interrupts and says, we're in the middle of a math class, right? And Ed and Al answer back, but it's so boring, and there's a little heart underneath their sentence. And Winry has fallen asleep. So these kids, you could take that as they're lazy, but I take that as they are so smart that regular school is boring to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and something that I noticed, like when they were talking about, figuring out, studying alchemy and trying to figure out how to do the human transmutation, they're kind of disagreeing about how to do it. Ed's talking about using the body's compositional ingredients, while Al's talking about, we need to understand he said the body's physical protein structure, and then go from there. And that's kind of interesting that they are discussing that. And it's impossible to make a human from the chemicals, but it's
there's only one way.
yes, only one way. But I would go with Al's way. It's you can't just throw everything together and expect things to happen. I mean, just like in your cells, there's DNA, which are the instructions to make all of these different proteins, and you can't just add everything together and hope it'll work out. You need to have instructions, and that's
sounds like they need cloning technology. But even that wouldn't really be their mom.
So I just thought that was interesting, because you don't really see them like discussing too much like about like how they're actually going to do it. Anyway,
makes me think this mangaka really did her research.
Yeah, I know. Like just like seeing some of this like little terms that they mentioned, like, oh yeah, that a normal person wouldn't know what that means. So kind of interesting. But anyway, so that's them at school, and is part of the manga, is in the manga, but not in the anime. And then we kind of switch to them eating dinner at the Rock Bells. It's a very lively scene. There's Ed and Pinako, Winry's grandmother, are fighting, and we learn that Ed hates milk.
Same.
Not same for me. I do enjoy milk, although I am kind of allergic to it. Not lactose intolerant, but sensitive.
I see where Ed's coming from, though, because milk, it looks vanilla, but when you taste it, it is not vanilla.
Yeah, but it's I don't know. As I've gotten older, the appeal of drinking a whole glass of milk I feel like it's not as appealing as it was when I was younger.
Yeah. But get our first, well, not a short rant, but Pinako and Ed kind of are at each other's throats because Ed won't drink his milk, and Pinako's like, "You're never gonna grow," and she calls him a subatomic shrimp, which is one of our favorite insults. And of course, he's firing right back at her because I think Pinako is kind of shrunk with age, so they're both pretty short.
Yes. And then you just see like Winry and Ed and Al in the background, like, guys, stop fighting.
Trying to have a peaceful dinner.
Yeah. And then we see the boys studying more. They're reading books, and they get a teacher to teach them more about alchemy. And kind of throughout these scenes, they're usually studying in their father's office, and that's kind of I like also in the manga, like there's more of them, like they're not just studying in the office, in their dad's office, they're also like sleeping there and talking about, you know, life and stuff, and it's really cute.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me of when I was a lot younger, my brother and I don't know, we would have not sleepovers in his room, but I would be in his room and it would just be late at night. And we both knew that we needed to get to bed, but I'd just stay in there because we weren't done talking yet. And if you have similar interests, I think you just want to stay talking with your sibling for a while.
Yeah. There was something in the manga, but we kind of already passed. We missed the stew part. He's talking about the stew, and
milk in it, yeah.
Yeah, and he says milk is so gross, but like this, it's so interesting that like if it's in the stew and the stew is delicious, and he just says it's just like science, people have to try new things or there's never progress.
That's true.
And that's very, very applicable to real life, and I just thought that's interesting.
All right. And anyway. Speaking of going into new territory and trying new things, they attempt the human transmutation.
Yes. So they're putting together in the ingredients, listing kind of the chemical composition, and then they just start the transmutation. And it seems at first like, oh, it's going so well, but then it
all went wrong.
Yes, it went so wrong.
Why do I want to start singing I Dreamed a Dream?
All of a sudden, like their limbs start to kind of unravel, and Al completely unravels, and their heads screaming, and they're like, Al, and like, Ed, help me, brother, help me. And then like everything's white, and Ed is standing alone in front of a gate, and
it's just like a blank void.
Yes. And then there's this weird guy.
Yeah, and we mentioned this in the last episode, but this is the character who is called Truth, and Al's voice actress also plays this character. It's this kind of disembodied voice that has, you can kind of tell it's Al's voice actress because, you know, similar sound and whatnot, but there's this echo kind of reverb going on and a deeper tone, so it's like they layered the tones on top of each other so you can't tell if it's a male or female voice. And when Ed asks who it is, Truth replies that I'm what you would call the world or the universe or God or truth or all or one, and I am you, points at Ed. And this creature comes out of the gate behind Ed. It's this massive eye, and it's bathed in shadows, and these shadowy hands reach out of the gate and grab Ed and drag him in so that he can see the truth.
Yeah, and there's kind of like, I guess it's almost like those film reels that you see like swirling past him.
Yeah.
And I didn't really pay attention like in the anime what they were, but in the manga I was like looking more closely, and like I noticed some like interesting things, like in one roll of film, I guess is what I'm gonna call it, there's like, it looks like there's like a clump of cells like in a dish, and then you also see like a fetus and like in like various stages of development, and then you see it's like an angel, but it's not like what you would think what is normally depicted as an angel. It's more like, I don't know if you ever seen like really like biblical representations of an angel.
Oh, you mean like with the multiple wings?
Yeah, and like they're really like strange looking. Like it's like that, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, which reel is that on? It's interesting because in another reel, I see kind of like a human development one. Like there's an ape, and then it turns into a man slowly. I'm getting kind of conflicting theologies here.
Yeah. Here it's kind of like it's on the left hand side. Well, I guess I don't know exactly where, but it's on like the far left, and it's kind of like in the middle.
Oh, I see. Yeah, the wings are covering its body.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. Oh, I see. I missed that. I missed what you just said. And then like there's animals, and then you see images from his own life too. And then also there's like war and like there's a dragon.
It looks like the Ouroboros. We'll get into that later. Because it's like the dragon swallowing its tail.
Oh, and then there's like sorry, now I'm getting distracted because now there's like
it's really cool.
There's like a human, like you see like a skeleton and then then muscle.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
And there's like the bottom left. I'm not sure if that's an eye or if this is like a.
That's what I was thinking, but then like
Big
later
Bang?
on you see like a weird like pyramid kind of thing. So
yeah, well, the pyramid in the eye is the dollar bill with the pyramid with the eye on top.
Oh yeah.
We're getting into like some conspiracy theory. Bill Cipher is in Full Metal Alchemist.
Wow. It's interesting. Oh, something interesting that I saw is in the manga they were mentioning that they watched a movie.
Yeah, I know.
And I was like,
so this is what?
October 3rd, 1911. So
oh man.
So it's like 19. What is it? Is that
well,
4
it
years
would
later?
Be black and whites.
When did movies? I thought actually maybe they were around. Yeah, you look that up.
1878 was the first film, apparently. So,
but like actual like movie or just like film, like we caught people moving on camera.
Well, here's what I'm. What was that? There's this movie.
I can't remember like.
There's this movie called Hugo, and it goes into like filmmaking industry. It's Georges Millet. He made a bunch of fun short type films, and he like really pushed cinema. And one of the most groundbreaking films he made was A Trip to the Moon. It was made in 1902. It was a black and white, and so I wonder if that's the one that Ed and Al saw when they mentioned the movie, what was the context for that?
So they're talking about alchemy, and they're talking about how a guy, like a fly got in the way, and then they made a fly man or something.
That sounds kind of like a Georges Millet type thing, but I might even be saying his name wrong. It's French. I just remember in film class talking about him, but he just kind of utilized actors and cool props and different techniques to make things that were impossible look possible. Mm-hmm. And it's like a merging of film, claymation, and everything in between.
Oh, here's what he said. But what about that alchemist who was performing a transmutation when a fly flew into the circle and the guy became a fly man? Okay. Where are we?
Back to the human transmutation. Ed is through the gate. All of those images flash at him. He thinks he sees his mother, and he tries to reach out to her, but he ends up in front of truth again, in front of the gate. Mm-hmm. Ed is very fascinated by what he's just seen, even though it was a lot for him to take in. He wants to see it again. But truth tells him that was all he could show him for the toll he paid. And he steps towards him, and a leg appears on Truth. It slowly forms up his left leg, and Ed's left leg slowly disintegrates. And Truth says, "You remember the law of equivalent exchange, don't you, alchemist?" And
then he's
quick cut back
into their father's office, and Ed starts screaming about not taking his brother, and
Ed is in pain.
You hear a big clank, and a suit of armor falls over, and he's drawing something on the inside of the armor, and then he performs alchemy.
Yes, and I'm going to interject here and say the manga is very, not visceral, but you can see everything that's happening. And also anime and manga, before he draws the rune and the armor, if you're wondering what happened to their mother, the transmutation did not work. The creature that they created it twitches and dies and pukes up blood. And in the manga, Ed is so disgusted and horrified that he throws up. And after he binds his leg up so he doesn't bleed out, he draws the rune with his blood. And this is where the manga just deviates slightly from Brotherhood. After he performs the second transmutation, we do see Truth again. And he says, "Back again, are we? You really are a fool." And you see a right hand forming on Truth.
Yes. And then we see the mid-roll. The first one is Al at 10 years old, and then the second one is Ed at 11 years old. And then we cut back to Roy and Maze Hughes talking again in the present. And I think Maze or Hughes is like saying like, "Oh, what does he say? Like, they're so young." Like, I don't know. Somehow it works where it's an easy transition to like 4 years earlier. So we cut to 4 years earlier, and we see Roy is visiting. First, he goes to their home and sees carnage, and he goes to Panako's or the Rockbell's home, and is like really upset and like, "What'd you guys do?" And you see Ed, he just looks so dejected and dead. He's sitting in a wheelchair, no missing arm, missing leg, and you see a big suit of armor standing behind him. Then Roy asks them or offers a chance for them to join the military as alchemists, and by doing so, they'll be offered a lot of opportunities that they wouldn't receive otherwise, access to materials and just privileges that'll make their study of alchemy easier. And he mentioned that they might be able to get their bodies back if they join the military. Then at the same time, Second Lieutenant Riza Hawkeye is talking to Winry.
There's great parallels when Roy's talking to the boys and Winry and Riza are talking. I won't say everything. You kind of have to read it for yourself. I think it's done well in the anime, of course, with the cuts and everything, but the manga really does parallel it very well in the panels. But Winry essentially asks why Riza joined the military, and Riza says there's someone I have to protect. And it will continue to cut back and forth from Roy to Riza, talking about decisions, deciding to come into the military, the opportunities, keeping others safe, and doing something for yourself and contributing to a greater cause. And you can tell Roy's very much trying to convince the boys to go into this path. And Riza is very much confirming her convictions of why she does what she does. And you can see that maybe the military isn't full of horrible people. Maybe it's full of people who have something to protect or something to hold on to.
It's more than it seems. It's not just this big organization. It's made up of individuals who,
yes,
are each there for their own reasons. And
yes. And another important thing to note is once Riza says the words, "There's someone I want to protect," it cuts right to Roy. So not so subtly indicating who she's protecting.
Yes. And then as Roy and Riza are leaving, Riza is kind of like mentions like Ed looks done and he's not going to join, but Roy sees the fire in his eyes and he's like, he's going to join. And then we get cut to Ed is laying in like a kind of hospital bed, and Winry and Panako are getting ready to give him automail, which I don't think we really mentioned, but you can kind of see like from the outside of their house that they run an automail shop, which is prosthetics.
Yeah, so it's limbs. Like half machine shop, half hospital. And when they're getting Ed ready for the surgery, Panako explains that usually there's 3 years to recovery for automail, and to be able to function normally again. But Ed says he's going to do it all in one.
Mm-hmm. And then we transition from, like, we have to assume it's a year later. Ed and Al are fighting in the front lawn, and Ed is back on his feet with a new arm and a new leg, and he mentions that he isn't able he hasn't done alchemy in a long time since that day, and he tries it for the first time, and he does it just by clapping his hands together and he does not draw a transmutation circle. And Al is very surprised, and Ed kind of mentions like, "Oh, you can't do it too? You didn't see it, did you?" And Al's like, "Nope." And Ed makes his classic
knife
on his arm or on his hand, with his hand, and Winry throws a wrench at him.
Yes, she's mad that he messed with her precious automail. Yes. And of course they start bickering a little bit, and Al in the anime, he just gets this kind of cheeky little smile, and the animation on his armor changes. And in the manga, he says something along the lines of, "Isn't it great to be young?"
Yes, he ships it.
Yes, he does. And before we know it, Ed is going before the Fuhrer, King Bradley, to take the alchemist test. And he's a kid, so everyone's kind of surprised. And they're even more surprised when he doesn't need to draw a transmutation circle. He just claps his hands together and makes a spear. And this is where we hear like the first, it's like this drum beat that repeats throughout the show, but it's seriously good. Mm-hmm. And Ed doesn't stop there, though. He's very ambitious. So he makes the spear and he charges the Fuhrer. He stops just shy of, hurting him, and all of the soldiers have their guns trained on him, and he just kind of shrugs it off and says, "You might want to have better security," which the Fuhrer, he says, "I'll consider it," but at the same time, he had pulled his sword without Ed noticing and sliced the spear in half. But obviously Ed passed. His age is not an issue, and he is part of the military. And
Yes.
Roy informs him that the Fuhrer gave him a title, Full Metal. So he is known as the Full Metal Alchemist, and he's given a silver pocket watch. In the manga, it's supposed to be gold, but this pocket watch is proof of that you are a state alchemist in the military. And Ed kind of gives an evil grin as he realizes that he's got like this wicked cool name and kind of intimidating.
Yeah. Something interesting that happened in the manga, but they didn't show in the anime, is kind of after the test, Ed and Roy and Riza are walking back to Roy's office, I assume, and they're talking, and Ed mentions like, oh, when I pulled my spear out, everybody like jumped to help the Fuhrer, and Roy did not move at all.
Yes.
I don't know. Roy is kind of pretty. He doesn't hide his true feelings. Like, he's kind of like, oh, yeah. If you would have gotten rid of him, that would have helped me. And and it's like, whoa, now I have something to like blackmail with you with. And then Roy immediately shoots back like, oh, you know what? I think I remember you attempting human transmutation. So
Wooden thing.
Let's just call it even.
They've got this mutual forced friendship.
Yeah. Yep. They both know each other's
weak spots.
Dark secrets.
Yep, and the episode ends with Ed and Al are back on the train. They're about to arrive in Lior, and it's again bathed in this kind of ominous light and tone, and perhaps they can find the Philosopher's Stone, and that's where we leave off.
Yes, yeah, that is the end of the episode.
So. Well, besides animation, I have a brief note on Trisha Elric. I wanted to go over her name. So Trisha is of English origin, and it means noble, and that she is. And I guess animation-wise, the effects when they're doing the human transmutation, that the light that just washes over them and how the colors change and it becomes more ominous, and that paired with the music, it really achieves that sinister effect. Contrast that with the gates of truth where it's just blank white, and I don't know, you're not really supposed to, you don't know how to feel because you don't know what this gate is. White isn't exactly a color that gives you fear though, but just the blankness and emptiness of it does give you kind of an unsettled feeling.
Now kind of to do like
outro.
our
goodbye, our long goodbye.
Yeah. So like we mentioned last time, we're gonna do favorite line of the episode, kind of what was the moral of the episode, or what did we learn, and then who pushed the story forward.
Yep.
Okay, so favorite line of the episode, we both have the same one.
Yes, we do.
Do you want to read it? Because I
do.
I have, okay, because I have, like, I don't know, a little bit of commentary, so.
Okay. Give him back. He's my brother. Take my leg. Take my arm. Take my heart. Anything. You can have it. Just give him back. He's my little brother. He's all I have left. It's so heart-wrenching.
Yes, and this, I don't know, this is, like, to me, like, the I don't know, it just sums up the show so well. Like, it's some like you see the, the bond and the love that Ed has for his brother. And I also think, like, it really, I don't know, even though this is like a horrible situation and like kind of unimaginable and very much unrealistic, like the feelings that he is expressing is like very relatable, because I think most people have somebody in their life that they would they would say this
Mm-hmm.
to that person. You would do anything for that person or people, and just that feeling of that fear, I don't know,
Yeah.
of losing someone, and that, I don't know.
Yeah. So that leads right into, what did we learn, or what was the moral or theme of this episode?
Yes. Yeah. We kind of think that the moral was grieving is important for moving on. When Ed and Al are sitting at their mother's grave, Winry kind of comes up behind them and says, like, you shouldn't cry over your mother. Or
Yeah, I think what she says was, maybe her mom and dad said this to her, but they say that you shouldn't cry over the graves of those you love, because they'll be sad for you and they don't want you to grieve. But the opposite is actually true, because if you don't let it all out, then you're not going to move on. And Ed and Al really, they didn't. They wanted to bring her back, and once that hope was taken away, they were left with even less than what they had.
Yeah. I would say it's more Ed that can't move on. Yeah.
No, I think that's valid.
He's the one that first brings up human transmutation, and Al does, is like, we're not supposed to do that. But Ed,
he goes along with it.
Yeah, he goes along with it. And I think that it's interesting, and you kind of see throughout the show, like, how that affects their relationship. Like,
yeah, and Ed is
Al loses his entire body.
Yes.
And he didn't even really want to do it to begin with.
Right.
And so there's just so much.
Ed is also the one who can't seem to forgive their father, and Al seems a little more easygoing about that. But I think on the whole, Ed is the more ambitious, gets an idea in his head and follows through, and Al is more of the, let's think this idea through before we make a decision on it.
Yeah.
But I think Al starts to get hope once he sees the research notes, and maybe it is possible.
He definitely goes along with it, and he's not, but also at the same time, he's only 10. So it's kind of hard to be like.
Yeah, and on the flip side, Ted's only 11.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly why this happened in the first place.
Yeah, I was in 6th grade when I was 11. I don't think. Oh man.
No,
I can't even imagine. But anyway, now who pushed the story forward?
Roy. He was the one who offered Ed the military position, become a state alchemist. Without that, they would not really have started on their journey to become to regain their bodies.
Yeah. All right, and that's all that we have. So until next time, thanks for listening, and we'll be back with episode 3 pretty soon. And keep watching along, keep reading along, and let us know if you have any comments or questions or anything of that sort.
Yes. All right.
See you later. Bye.